Thank you, Reed. Whoa, wow, this is really loud. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining us at our State of Brooklyn events, host at the Brooklyn Historical Society. My name is Nick Powell. I'm the City Hall Bureau Chief at City and States, and I'm a native Brooklynite myself. I grew up in Park Slope. My parents migrated over to Ditmas Park, where they live now, and also where I live with my fiance, who's here tonight. And I'm very pleased to welcome the Borough President of Brooklyn, Eric Adams. He is also a longtime Brooklynite, former state senator, former police captain, and we're going to have a kind of free-flowing discussion on all things Brooklyn. Thank you for joining us today, Eric.
Thank you very much.
And if you haven't had an opportunity to check out our Brooklyn issue, Eric has a fantastic op-ed on the Brooklyn brands. It's very well written, very well articulated, and I wanted to start off the discussion by asking you a little bit about kind of what you're talking about in that op-ed. So, Brooklyn has obviously become kind of the epitome of cool, everything cool, quote unquote, in New York City. Now, I'm curious to get your take because, we have so much development going on in northern Brooklyn and Williamsburg and Greenpoint, and obviously the downtown area has flourished. But for you, in your eyes, what was the tipping point for Brooklyn kind of becoming, more of a brand and, instead of just being one of the 5 boroughs?
I think it's something that has gone unnoticed, and many people don't realize what happened, and we almost are doing a Back to the Future. When Commissioner Bratton was here the first time under Mayor Giuliani, he instituted an amazing program called Broken Window, and it allowed people to understand that quality of life meant everything. And when we saw the decrease in crime, when we saw a policy of walking past drug dealers standing on corners selling drugs, we took an aggressive stance on how we were going to ensure that the city was safe. And once we made a city safe, people were willing to return, and they started to look at the brownstones, which are really unique to Brooklyn and Manhattan. They started to look at the beautiful parks that we have, and there was a reinvestment of what Brooklyn, not what it was, but what it could become. And then we were extremely fortunate with my predecessor. Marty Markowitz did not allow his eyes to get in the way of his heart. He knew that there was something special in Brooklyn, and not so much in the physical structure, but in the people. We were resilient. We took that awful commute to Manhattan every day, and we couldn't wait to get back to BK and hang out in Brooklyn and be a part of Brooklyn. And that was what really made the brand. It was really the people of the borough.
Round of applause, it's fine, no problem. Now, in the last, like we've talked about, and like you allude to in your op-ed, in the last 20 years, we've seen so much change in the borough, and not only from just the influx of small businesses and local businesses, but also in terms of real estate. So I want to talk about that a little bit in terms of housing. So obviously, the mayor has put forth an affordable housing plan to create 200,000 units of affordable housing throughout the city. Now, Brooklyn's real estate prices have skyrocketed as the kind of the Brooklyn brand has really solidified. So, I guess my question to you is there room for the kind of affordable housing that Mayor de Blasio wants to create, and is it possible that government can kind of help bridge that kind of yawning inequality gap that is, not only prevalent in Brooklyn, but also throughout New York City?
Yes, it is. There's room. I think we need to be creative. We have to be bold and unafraid. Building higher, particularly on our corridors, is not something that would destroy neighborhoods. I've called for the changing of zoning on Broadway. We need to look at how we could rezone certain areas. I think that we did a great job on 4th Avenue. We rezoned 4th Avenue, but we protected the inner blocks so that we didn't have tall buildings inside the inner blocks and inner community, destroying communities. Broadway is ready. We need to look at all of our train corridors, the 2 line, the 3 line, the 8 line, all of those traditional corridors where people want a quick commute to Manhattan. We just broke ground on Livonia Avenue. I remember in my beginning years in policing, the thought of living on Livonia Avenue was unheard of, and now we're doing a Livonia Commons, where we're going to have a boys club and some other great items there. So I think if we start to build up, we look at the 50-30-20 model. We can't continue to do only 80-20. We need to bring in the police officer, the firefighter, the teacher, the accountant to stabilize communities. Something that went unnoticed for years. There was a program that HUD produced called the Officer Teachers Next Door program. When the police officers and teachers moved on the block, it changed the dynamics of many communities, and we need to revisit that. If we allow the right zoning and the right locations, that we don't destroy communities, I think there's a lot of room to ensure that everyday Brooklynites are able to afford their housing stock. The market is going to continue to say whatever the market demands. You know, that's the reality. Brooklyn, we have become a successful place to live. Young people are coming here, they want to raise their families here, and we need to have the room to make it affordable, and I think it's very possible. And I commend the mayor for having that vision of understanding that that's a top priority to have housing.
Now, shifting gears slightly, I want to talk about technology, and obviously, you know, startups and tech startups have been have also flourished in the borough. We have the Brooklyn Tech Triangle, not too far from here, actually. And obviously, like we alluded to before, North Brooklyn has been kind of an incubator for those kind of startups as well. As it pertains to your office, I know you've taken a real interest in kind of utilizing technology to better deliver services, and I'm curious if you could maybe elaborate on your vision for that. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say.
One of the first things we did, my office, is that we brought in a lot of tech leaders. A lot of tech leaders are moving to Brooklyn. And years ago, I often talked about when Robert Moses did years ago, he built the bridges small so that buses couldn't go out to Long Island, and that was his form of ensuring some form of integration. The problem we're having now, that same mindset is being used when you look at technology. You can't tell an Epsi or some other great tech giant to go to East New York industrial zone or go further into Brownsville when the technology is not there. So we need to map the borough, find out where is high-speed internet, find out where you have free Wi-Fi, and that needs to be part of our overall plan. If we don't get high-speed internet into every part of the borough, then we can't continue to ask great tech giants to move to those parts of the borough. You're not going to run a multi-million-dollar corporation wondering if the internet is going to crash or not. We have to do the build out. Government must be a part of that. We need to relook at the spaces on how we are attracting tech giants. They're concerned about being able to ride their bike to their place of employment, having a great place to eat, and to raise their family. We're looking for systems where everything is built into one. And so some of the things we're doing with technology is we're looking at our elders. The new Jim Crowism is the fact that many of our elders are having a digital divide. We're using live stream, which you're doing today, to go into every senior citizen center in the borough where I can broadcast live to all the senior centers and have them learn about the services that we have. We're creating what's called cyber seniors, taking young people to go into the senior centers and teach seniors how to use the internet, using emails, commute with people, to find out what's available, because we're leaving them behind and that can't happen. Lastly, STEM. STEM is huge. We can't continue to expect to be productive. When you look at some of our school districts, 80% of the children are not at math or reading levels. We must ensure that we employ a clear expectation around STEM. I want to move away from textbooks. I said it in my inauguration. There's no reason we can't have a textbook-free school where children can have iPads and put their textbooks on. By not allowing children to have access to all reading materials, we are preventing them from developing their full personhood. And so I believe let's use technology, bring it to the classroom, no longer allow the book industry to control what books our children are going to have access to. Let's put them on the iPad. Let's have everyone have an even fair playing field by allowing our children to have access to technology.
Now, circling back to kind of the branding of Brooklyn a little bit, gentrification is a word that's often associated with kind of how Brooklyn has developed or grown, and obviously gentrification is kind of a double-edged sword. You want the development, but you also don't want the neighborhoods and the city of Brooklyn itself to kind of lose what made it so unique, the culture, the personality, the small businesses, for instance. So I'm curious, I mean, like, how do you view, kind of that, the quote unquote gentrification, and how can Brooklyn kind of retain some of that, some of its personality, some of its culture without, by not, kind of stagnating and staying kind of,
Well,
as it is now?
I believe, and you hear this conversation not only in Brooklyn, you hear it in Harlem, you hear it across the city, Long Island City. I think gentrification is a mindset, it's not an ethnicity. I don't want my 18-year-old to grow up in a community where he knows people who look like him, talk like him, dress like him, and listen to the same music. I think diversity is important. 47% of Brooklyn speak a language other than English at home. I tell my son all the time that the real classroom is not in the sterilized environment of a building, it's out in that community. I want my son to be able to walk down the street and go into a mosque, a synagogue, a Buddhist temple. I want him to engage with different ethnicity. I want us to understand that it's about how do we live together and bring the diversity. Brooklyn has this thing called fusion. You can eat a roti while sitting in a synagogue and having a Chinese chef cooking it for you. I mean, there's so much happening in this borough, and we would do ourselves a disservice to state that a particular place in the city belongs to a particular ethnic group. Sunset Park doesn't belong to Hispanics. Bay Ridge doesn't belong to Irish. Bed-Stuy don't belong to blacks. Brooklyn belongs to Brooklynites and people who are going to come to this borough and give back in a very meaningful way, using some of the energy and some of the brain power to help our neighbors and being it together. My goal is not to say, I live next door to you. My goal is to say, you're my neighbor. We're going to look after each other and make sure that we can continue to move the borough in the right direction. So that's why it feeds into affordable housing. That's why it feeds into volunteerism. I am a big believer in those of us who are afforded the opportunities to acquire certain skills. Those skills does not belong to our employees, employers, they belong to us. And that should be part of what we give back to the community at large. So I welcome diversity in the borough. I'm encouraged by it. I'm encouraged to see the amount of energy that this borough is bringing. Brooklyn is the center of the universe, and who does not want to live on the center of the universe, particularly when you got a great borough president?
Touche. So I'm going to put our editor-in-chief, Morgan Peckmo, on the spot a little bit. So he wrote an op-ed for our Brooklyn issue as well, and within it, it's a very good op-ed, and I highly recommend it. But within it, he suggests that Brooklyn, because it is truly, as you said, a city on its own, outside of the five boroughs, should have a deputy mayor within city government that can, I guess, more effectively execute a real vision for the borough. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Why is this a good idea? Why is this a bad idea? Is it necessary? I mean, can Brooklyn function without a deputy mayor and with just a borough president?
Well, first of all, I think it's a great idea. I could wear both those hats. So, clearly he had me in mind. to have both positions. And, you know, all serious, the role of the borough president is to do what he described. And I tell people oftentimes, they talk about, you know, during the years when we lost the Board of Estimates, the office doesn't make the man makes the office. And so it doesn't matter, the mayor talks about he wants more power. Borough talks about he wants more power. You never have enough power. The question is what are you going to do with the power you have? And so we don't need another deputy mayor. What we need is the relationship I have with the current mayor. The current mayor, when he does something in Brooklyn, he reaches out to our office. We are a part of it. We have created a partnership, and the synergy is great. And I think that all the borough presidents will tell you the same thing, that it is about ensuring, as Eric Adams, the borough president, my role is to make sure the city agencies are providing the services, and we are receiving the services based on those city agencies. That's what the charter calls for. If someone wants to call for a charter revision, then let's do that. Let's give more things that the borough president should do. But right now, the powers that we have, we can do some great things with it. It's a great office. It's a great opportunity to be on the ground and do some real things for people. And so I'm excited about it. And I understood the spirit in which the article was written, but the reality is the borough president is a very difficult and tough job, and you really need someone that was elected by the people to represent the people and could be independent from any city agency or from the mayor's office, that you can carry out the agenda of the people.
Now, looking forward, you know, we've seen the last 20 years how much Brooklyn has changed. For the next 20 years, or the next 10 years, the next 15 years, what are you most hopeful about, and what are you most optimistic about, looking forward about in terms of Brooklyn's overall growth? Is there something specifically, you know, whether it's you know, more housing, whether it's you know, more tourist attractions? What is it that you're looking to see for the next 20 years in Brooklyn's continued growth and development?
And that's a good question. I think the previous years we saw great buildings and great structures. We have the Barclays Center on Atlantic and Flatbush Avenue. Hotels are growing. We have some great hotels that are going to develop in Williamsburg and Greenpoint. We just had our first Hilton, one of Hilton armed hotels open on the corner of Flatbush and Tillery. So we're going to grow. The train is moving. It has left the station. My role is to make sure it stops at every station, and it can't skip people back by. No express stops in this run. We can't continue to build tall buildings and small people. People are living in the shadows, and they're afraid, they're scared, and they're hurting, and hurt people hurt people. My job is to make sure the investment we put in brick and mortar, now I have to put it in people. I have to teach financial literacy so that people can learn how to use their money better, how they can save for a home. I have to teach proactive health, that we no longer use the hospital emergency rooms as our primary care, but use urgent care centers. We have to teach real education. Our children are not competing only in Bed-Stuy or Brownsville. These are Budapest leaders. These are global leaders, and they can't do it if we don't start developing their full personhood and not only dealing with just taking the test and checking off a box. So I must concentrate on human capital, build a better Brooklynite by giving them services. What has shocked me in my first 6 months of an analysis, there are so many free services that Brooklynites can receive that are being left on the table every year because those who are in need of services are not connected to the people who are giving the services. Then we have a duplication of services. On the same block, the same nonprofits are doing the same thing with boards. We have to stop that. The spirit is now not isolation, it's collaboration. We have to all come together and realize the agenda is not to maintain a board, but to maintain the quality of life for Brooklynites. And it's not a popular thing to say, but people who know me, I have never been popular in what I have to say. I want to be truthful because I love this borough. I spent 22 years wearing a bulletproof vest, standing on these same street corners, protecting children and family. And it's not going to change because I wear a blue suit. I'm here to protect and serve and not to be served. And I'm going to be a darn good borough president when this is over.
So, lastly, as we wrap up our excellent Q&A with the borough president, I wanted to ask you, are you a Brooklyn Nets fan? I'm a Knicks fan. The Nets came, they invaded, and as a Brooklynite, I can't even muster any even like disingenuous fandom for this team. But I'm very curious what your answer will be.
I love the Nets. I think it's a great addition to the borough of Brooklyn. The Barclays Center must have gravitational pull to pull in New Yorkers and allow them to explore the entire borough. Taxpayers' money went to build the Barclays Center. They planted the seed. Now the harvest is here. All the taxpayers must benefit from that through jobs. I want to boost tourism in the borough. When you get 52 million visitors to New York City and they stay in the traditional locations, they need to see what Brooklyn has to offer. It was a great addition to get Marty Markowitz with NYC and Company to boost the other boroughs where the people live. The other 4 boroughs, and I would like to see a boost in tourism in the borough to see our attractions. We want to do the first ball drop in Brooklyn this year so we could attract people to come out. Why have to go to Manhattan when you could go to Brooklyn? So I'm a Nets fan. I think the Nets is going to continue the move of making Brooklyn an international destination. And this year, when we win the championship, it will be good to have the parade on Flatbush Avenue and not in Manhattan.
I respectfully disagree with you on the championship part, but everybody, let's give a round of applause for Borough President Eric Adams.